Hi, I'm Karen Friedman Agnifilo. I'm the co-host of Mistrial that I do with my two close friends and law partners, Danya Perry and Kathleen Rice. And this is a new thing we're doing now, Mistrial After Dark, as my co-host on my other podcast, Legal AF, Michael Popak, would like to call them. And what the After Dark segments are is just bite-sized clips from this week's episode of Mistrial. So tune in because Kathleen Rice, who's a former member of Congress and a former elected district attorney, and I, and Danya Perry, who's a former Southern District of New York federal prosecutor, and I, of course, am a former state court prosecutor in the Manhattan DA's office, the office that successfully tried Donald Trump recently. Listen to us talk about the trial and what a trial of Donald Trump would look like if Jack Smith ever does get to go to trial. For now, he doesn't look like he's going to go to trial in this case anytime soon because they're arguing about presidential immunity and they're going to go up to the Supreme Court. And so it will be some time before there is a trial, if at all. Why is that? Because if Donald Trump wins the election, you know what's going to happen. He will then dismiss these cases since he will be in charge of the Department of Justice and he'll pardon himself. So we might get a trial, we might not get a trial, but listen to how three former prosecutors and current trial lawyers would try this case. You know, the thing that really struck me the most about this whole thing was it just was such a reminder at how serious and how terrifying January 6th actually was. And I know, Kathleen, you were there that day. You were, you had to be, you were like hiding for your life and, in an office and, you were concerned because you were a member of Congress that day and you were there when they stormed the Capitol and couldn't participate in your role in certifying the election. Right. I mean, and, I just can't imagine what it was like. And it was just the idea of how serious it was. I was thinking to myself, how would I, if I were to try this case, if I were Jack Smith, how would I open? What would my opening statement be? Because there's so many sections, right? There's the state by state, right? They go state by state. He did, the pressure campaign in the states, the lies, the court cases, the pressuring Mike Pence, the fake electors, all of that. And I ultimately, the way I know I've come to where how I would open it is not in chronological order. I would start with January 6th and I would recreate that day and I would show portions of the speech. I would show the crowds that marched as a result. I would show the storming of the Capitol and in real time, I would say this happened. And then he tweeted this happened. And then when so and such advisor came in and told him, that they're taking Mike Pence, to safety, they're secreting him somewhere because they're going after Mike Pence. And his response was, so what? I would go through that. And then I would say, and what got us there? Why did he do that? And then I would go in chronological order from there. But I'd want to remind people, I'd want to kind of capture the heart and soul of the jury and get them to be on my side. That's where I landed. But as trial lawyers that you guys are, I just would love to hear what your thoughts are. And we didn't talk about this in advance. So
I have to jump in because the thing that really, to me, is the most damaging and still lingers is the fact, and this is how I would start. I would take every single quote from Donald Trump in which he acknowledges that he lost, that the case against Dominion was bullshit, that the fake electors was a whole criminal scheme. Like, there is so many statements, and Smith goes into some of them in this, where Donald Trump knows he lost. Danya, you talked about what he said to Jared and Ivanka about doesn't matter whether you win or lose, you fight like hell. To me, that is the most compelling piece of evidence because Donald Trump knew that he was going to lose and he knew on election day that he lost. And yet what he did to convince his followers, his voters, that this was a stolen election. That's what kills me, right? A leader is supposed to tell the truth. A leader is supposed to have enough um, humility to say, you know what? You can't win them all. And we came up a little short, which is another line that Donald Trump recently said when he was asked about this election. Well, we came up a little short. And instead of admitting it, he spent months. And by the way, here he's still talking about it 4 years later, even though he's dropping in little snippets where he acknowledges that it was all bullshit, that he lost. And that to me is the biggest travesty, because you have people who really believe that this was a rigged election. And it's one thing if they believe it about 2020, that's bad enough. But now in their heads, there can never be an election that is not rigged. And that is the biggest threat to our democracy, I would say. Don, I don't know how you feel, how you
Yeah,
would
I
start.
totally agree. I thought it was really telling. That was the thing that kind of stood out the most for me about Vance's remarks about the election. All they have to fall back on at this point, because there's no proof of anything, it's just, well, tens of millions of people believe that it was rigged. Well, they only believe that because you've been feeding them this lie for 4 years. And yes, and they're planting the seeds for the next one, and that is absolutely terrifying. So I think both as a matter of democracy and also good trial hygiene and practice, that does have to be in the opening statement here. I mean, what we have to remember about this case, we're pretty steeped in the facts, right? And we've been thinking about it. Like, we have a memory hold. You certainly, Kathleen, haven't been there, haven't memory hold January 6th. But a lot of people, as you pointed out, have kind of forgotten about it. And the jury, almost by definition, they're going to be chosen because they are impartial and they don't really have views. So it will be, I think, just like the January 6th commission did. I think it's probably more closing argument than opening statement. But I think they do have to bring the jury back into that. And exactly as you said, Karen, hit them in their guts and their hearts. The brains, yes, because there are facts and there's law and they need to apply them, but there has to be a narrative here. And no one can look at that footage, I don't think, right, and just say, like, it's fine, no, like, whatever, this is peaceful protest or tourism or whatever. And so I think that will be for sure a part of it, but obviously that's not the main thrust of the charges here, right? That's the main thrust is there was a fraud. Not that he didn't, they're not saying, there's not an incitement to violence charge per se here. So they have to be a little careful about it. There's going to be argument about it, but at the end of the day, the jury is going to need to understand what happened on that day for sure.
What I thought was the most telling, or I should say the most surprise. I don't even want to know what word I'm going to use, but the thing that hit me the hardest was how sophisticated this was, right? Like, this was a sophisticated, multi-pronged effort to steal the election, right? The first time he tried to steal election, when he dipped his toe in the water, was when he was paying your client, Danya, Michael Cohen, to falsify documents on his behalf to suppress the Stormy Daniels affair from the voters. That was when he first kind of dipped his toe in the water, tried to steal an election. That didn't work. I'm saying that did work. Sorry. And so that did work. And so that I feel like emboldened him in a way, like it emboldened him to say, wow, I can do this. And it was so incredibly, like, they talked about, they said, if, we're going to lie and say we won. I mean, that's
Yep.
that's in the indictment, right? Just say, and that's one of the allegations, one of the factual allegations, that just say you won, right? Just when they were saying he was so pissed that Fox declared victory for Biden, that he was saying, just we're going to just say we won. And, even though they knew they didn't, and they can prove that 10 ways to Sunday, and because they were going to get people to believe it. And then once they get people to believe it, then they're going to pressure the states. And what states did they pressure? Only the ones he lost in. only the ones that are swing states. He only called Republicans in those states. He only asked about his own election. He didn't ask about the other people who, it wasn't like he was concerned about voting in general or fraud in general in those states. He was concerned about him. And so he tried to pressure them. He then tried to come up with those fake electors, right? Let's do that through fraud. Then he tried to pressure, well, we can't talk about this, but he tried to get his Department of Justice to essentially make up fake charges and fake fraud and fake investigations. Bill Barr used to be honest about it, his attorney general, but now he supports Trump. It was just, I don't even know what happened. He got hypnotized by the cult. And then, he goes to Mike Pence and tries to convince him to not certify the election. They brought 60 court cases alleging fraud, lost every single one. All of this was so much. The efforts were so sophisticated and so not like multifaceted, multi-pronged. It was like, and then when it didn't work, okay, let's take it by brute force on January 6th. I mean, it's just shocking to me what he did. And the thing that's more terrifying is this election. He, like when you see what they did there in a short period of time, they've had 4 years.
4 years.
To plan this one.
Yeah.
And they've got pretty sophisticated lawyers on their side who are helping them mastermind this. And some of it is through these election related cases that they are teeing up in the courts. And, we have to be vigilant and we have to be careful, because this just goes to show the lengths with which they will go to steal this election if they lose.
I mean, they're already, what really is like jumps out, right, is that like they're saying it will be fraud if Harris wins, not if he wins. Like it's just such a, there's only fraud if, if like how, so they're definitely, setting the stage. And I agree with you almost completely, Karen, about everything you just said, other than, yes, in some ways, there were layers of complexity and sophistication and nuance and engineering and all that. In some ways, they're just so ham-fisted that you almost can't believe it, right? Some of these people who are talking about the elector scheme actually call it, like, I don't think I'm making this up, fake electors, right? Or alternate electors. Like, if you're going to crime, like, do a job.
But also the ringleader was Rudy Giuliani. I mean,
oh God.
Come on.
Did you see his daughter? Do you see his daughter? Oh my God. His daughter, Rudy Giuliani's daughter, came out. I think it was
actually was very sad.
It was so very sad. It was in Vanity Fair.
He basically said, Donald Trump took my father from me. He's a shell of what he used to be. His life has been destroyed, and I'm voting for Kamala Harris. I mean, and you think of her as like the little 4-year-old when her father got elected to the mayor, became mayor. And, kids are always the sad byproduct of, the misdeeds of the parents and the elders in their life. And, she's a lovely young woman. I don't know her personally, but she seemed like it was very heartfelt what she said. And, look, Rudy Giuliani, don't cry for me. I mean, he is an adult and he made his choices, but she saw the deterioration of a man that she admired and was her father, and was America's mayor.
I was going to say we all admired him. He was America's mayor.
Really melted. We all before our eyes.
Right.
I mean,
that's
look,
true.
he was like not just mayor; he was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District.
Right.
And
yeah.
Compensated, and now he just like screaming into a void, and I think it's, most people aren't taking him so seriously now, but it's, the fact that he was the primary architect and spokesperson for this does, yes, make you hope that they don't have a better man for the job or woman for the job the next time around.
Yeah. Well, another thing that Trump said was he hired Giuliani to do it because even his campaign lawyers said, it's done. You lost. There's no fraud. There's nothing. So he said, okay, you're out. Rudy, you're in. And by the way, I'm only going to pay you if you win. And the guy lost every single case, never got paid a penny. Or so this story is. And it's just so Trumpian, right?
Now he's at $148 million.
Yeah, but I know you're not going to win because I know this
right?
is all BS. But if by some miracle you win even one of these cases, then I'll pay you. I mean, it's just, you can't write
Yeah,
this
I
in a
wouldn't have
script.
taken that.
Of course not.
Good.
Well,
I
he's
know.
now for bankruptcy, right? And
Yeah,
is, these poor election
crazy.
workers who he
Yeah,
defamed and terrorized are now having to
Yeah.
chase him
Ruby
for
Freeman
it.
and Shay Moss. Yeah.
It's really just, I mean,
awful.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, you were referring to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss,
Yeah.
the mother daughter duo who they're in this, they're going to testify at this trial. So,
Oh,
they're
they
going to be,
have to. They have to, right?
yeah, yeah. And they're very effective, and I think they're very compelling, and they would be, they're exhibit A of what Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and all of them, what it's done to people's lives. So
yeah. To
anyway,
your point, Karen, like have an emotionally impactful witness like that does wonders with juries, right? They're like, oh, they probably can relate to them, you know, see that this is a person like me and look what's happened to their lives totally upended as a result of this, fraud.
100%. 100%. But of course, this is not going to get to a jury anytime soon, because this is going to go to the Supreme Court one more time before then to make sure that Judge Chutkin has made the right ruling or the correct ruling. Well, it's going to go to the DC Circuit, then the Supreme Court on presidential immunity. And of course, if Donald Trump wins the election, he will appoint the next attorney general, who will likely dismiss this case and all the cases against him and pardon all of the January 6th insurrectionists and make them heroes and patriots, and pardon himself and his family members and all of his friends. So that is what will happen if he is elected to all of this. But that's why everyone has to vote, and we're going to have to keep saying it all over and over and
It'll
over
be
and over
totally
and over
immunized.
again.
Yeah.
Totally immunized. All right. Well, I think we have reached the end of another episode of Mistrial,
Happy
and
New Year, ladies.
yeah, Happy New Year, and yeah, it's Rosh Hashanah, and
Happy one.
yeah, and Happy New Year to everybody who observes, and I just love spending time with you guys always. We hope you enjoyed this After Dark clip on how we would try the Donald Trump case that will hopefully go to trial at some point in the next year or so. Certainly not before the election, and certainly not at all if Donald Trump is reelected. So go out and vote in November, and we'll keep dissecting this case and bringing it to everybody's attention as much as we possibly can, so that people realize how important it is to vote this November.